Welcome everybody to today's practice forum, Exploring Men as Allies in the Workplace, of course, presented by Our Watch. I'm Rana Hussain. I'll tell you a bit about myself in a second. But before I do anything, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we meet on today. I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri and Bunurong country of the Kulin Nations. They have never ceded sovereignty, and given that, we must pay our respects then to their elders past and present and just acknowledge their continual survival. And I also want to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today with us. Welcome. We acknowledge the decades-long work and advocacy of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in working to prevent and address violence against all women. It's so important to me as the child of migrants to acknowledge traditional owners. My parents have always instilled in me that we are migrants to this country, and while we belong, we are in a sequence of people who have come to this country, and we must honour the people who traditionally own this land. So, like I said, I'm Rana Hussain, and of course, please drop into the chat box function as well where you're coming to us from. We'd love to see where you're all coming from. I'm Rana Hussain. I'm a leadership consultant who focuses on inclusion and belonging, particularly with leaders in workplaces, and helping them create environments of belonging for everybody. But I'm also a facilitator for Our Watch, particularly across sectors like the media and sport, which I've come from. My working background is from the sports sector before I became a consultant. But I'm also in a past life, I've had many lives, professionally anyway. I was a social worker who worked in the violence against women space. So this is an issue very close to my heart. But I feel like today's session, working with men and in environments where men are most prominent, is a happy coming together of all my professional experience. And for those of you who can't see me, I am a Muslim woman who wears a hijab. I've got my geometric shapes hijab on, some beautiful colors, black, maroon, pink, and I'm of Indian origin, so I've got my beautiful brown skin as well. So that's who you can picture in your mind as you listen to my voice. I also have with me Mike McAvoy. Mike, do you want to say hello to everyone? I've totally thrown him under the bus already.
Hello, everyone. It just took me about 30 seconds to find my unmute button. Really pleased to be here with you all, and we'll talk more as the session goes.
Thanks, Mike. Mike's going to jump in and out of our session today. He's my co-facilitator. Today's session, as you may have already gathered, has both closed captions and Auslan interpretation available. There is also a live illustrator, which is amazing to me, Alisha Matali, who will be sharing her screen throughout the session as well. So that's a little bit about me, but let's give you a little bit of a snapshot about Our Watch as well. Our Watch is a national leader in the primary prevention of violence against women and their children in Australia. And they work to embed gender equality and prevent violence against women where Australians live, learn, work and socialise. Our Watch is an independent not-for-profit organisation established in 2013 by the Victorian and Commonwealth governments. And since then, all state and territory governments have joined as members and signed up to their frameworks as their shared national plan, which is just incredible. And I urge you to just take a moment to reflect on that kind of progress. 2013 is not that long ago. I'm going to hand over to Mike now, who's going to tell you a little bit about the Men as Allies program and a little bit about the frameworks and resources from Our Watch.
Thanks, Rana. So yeah, Our Watch has a number of frameworks that shape the approach that Australia takes to stop violence against women from happening in the first place. The main one is Change the Story. It outlines the 4 drivers of violence against women, including sexual harassment, and the role that gender inequality plays and the reinforcing factors that can make violence against women more likely. Really relevant to today's discussion, we've got an evidence review and a practice guide called Men in Focus, and that's designed to support people to address masculinities and also work with men in the prevention of men's violence against women. It outlines the long-term, collective, and intersectional approach that's needed to dismantle those and transform really the norms and the structures and the practices that reinforce gender inequality and lead to men's violence against women. Another key suite of resources is the Workplace Equality and Respect resources. And those resources are really the core of the project that brings us together today. And that project is called Engaging Employers to Prevent Sexual Harassment. The Engaging Employers to Prevent Sexual Harassment project, it's funded by the Federal Department of Social Services in direct response to Recommendation 8 in the Respect at Work Sexual Harassment National Inquiry Report of 2020. We're working intensively with 4 selected workplaces from 3 sectors: the construction sector, telecommunications sector, and retail sectors, to promote gender equality and help prevent violence against women, which includes sexual harassment. A part of this project, and more broadly, we also have a role to play as an organisation in sharing knowledge, our networks, and supporting best practice beyond the 4 organisations that we're working with. And so we have brought together these practice forums with a broad range of stakeholders to really foster those collaborations, explore good practice, and to support everyone to lift our game and do everything we can. So this is the second of 5 sessions that we have planned around themes that we've identified as relevant to the sectors that we're working in. Over to you, Rana.
Thank you very much for that overview. And I just want to acknowledge as well, if anyone here, it's the middle of Ramadan. So if anyone here is fasting, hello to you, and feel free to go off camera or have a lie down and listen if you need to. I know it can get tiring as well. So just wanted to put that shout out there. Speaking of which, let's get through some housekeeping because we've got a bunch of things for you today. So I'm going to race through these. But a few things I wanted to flag with you, of course. This is going to be an interactive session. So we really do encourage you to participate. I love people interrupting me, so please don't worry about that. Put your hand up with the chat function or just come off microphone if you like, but also we've built in a fair bit of interaction as well. So please do engage with us as much as possible and keep your camera on if you can. I really love to see who I'm talking to, but I understand if that's not possible as well. So do what works for you, but if possible, stay with us on camera. I just ask that if you're not speaking and you're not interacting with us, make sure you're on mute as well, because that can get a bit distracting for everybody. And speaking of participation, we'll be using Slido to ask questions. So get your smartphone ready if you have one, or use another page on your laptop or computer. We're going to share the link in the chat for you to access. I think Jess has already done that. She's amazing behind the scenes. So you can use that link to access Slido. And we'll be using that throughout the session. We'll also be, we're not really going to take any breaks, but if you need to reach out to us, please use the chat function as well, and we can address what we can as we're moving along between Mike, myself, and Jess as well, keeping an eye on things. So as you can see on the screen, I just wanted to, I guess, flag the content of today's session, and just note that there's available support out there, because these conversations can be heavy for some people, and even if you're not expecting it, you can kind of be left with a lot of thoughts and potentially, like I said, some heaviness. So here are a bunch of services you can access. Please make sure you take a photo of those right now, but also I can see Jess has put them in the chat box as well. Please avail yourself of these. It's really important that you do if you're feeling something at any time, but particularly after this conversation. And throughout this training, we may ask you to consider things in different ways. And so we thought it would be useful to develop our own group agreement. You know, we're going to actually be diving into some difficult terrain, and we just want to make sure that this environment together here is one that we all feel like we can contribute to. So a bit on group agreements. This is really just what we expect of ourselves and each other when we're sharing this time together. And given that the content will cover maybe both personally and professionally challenging, we've drafted some of those up for you as well. We'll be inviting you to join the discussion, ask questions, like I said, and offer your insights. But I think this is a good way to kind of keep us all together in that safe space. So over the next few hours, really, it's my intention for us to create a supportive space for learning together where you can ask questions, feel challenged in a respectful and constructive environment. And it's my job as the facilitator to make sure I create that balance for all of you. But to help me do that, I ask you that you take on the responsibility of managing yourself and how you come to this conversation as well. At the same time, if at any point I feel like the conversation or behaviour crosses a line, expect me to step in and deal with that as well. I'll also be managing time, which, let me see, I'm so far okay with. And if I need to, I will move everybody on. And thank you to everybody who's popping in where you're joining us from as well. It's been really nice to see. I also want to flag that this is not a space where you need to be absolutely perfect. So while there might be things that are across the line, I also want to acknowledge that this is a learning space. So don't feel like you have to have a polished response or answer or question. I certainly don't. I don't expect you to. So please don't tie yourself up in knots about what are the right words all the time. I would love for you to just come to the conversation respectfully and with a respectful curiosity and give us your point of view as respectfully as possible, and don't worry about it being perfect. You know, we'll assume that you have the best intentions, even if you don't feel like you have a perfectly worded question. So I just want to let you off the hook a little bit there. We want to hear what you're thinking and feeling most of all. I also want to acknowledge that this is, like I said, this can be a tricky conversation. So please self-manage around your own self-care. Do what you need to do to look after yourself. Take deep breaths, step away. Like I said, you know, if you need to go off camera, do that. And I highly recommend, if you haven't already, to block off a little bit of time after this, or give yourself some breathing space to let yourself process what we've just discussed, but also do some of that self-care. A hot drink or something often helps as well. So if you're going straight into a meeting after this, just have a think about if you might need a little buffer in between. Like I said, let's keep this a learning space, but I just want to make the distinction that this isn't a counselling session. It's not a support space. So while it might bring up things for you, those services that we put up on the screen before are the perfect avenue to then follow up with. I say that because we, you know, while as much of this is about creating a supportive environment, we can't guarantee confidentiality, although we do ask everybody to maintain Chatham House rules. I just want you to self-manage around how much you feel like you want to disclose. So I wanted to flag that. Like I've emphasized, this is a very kind of engaging and proactive conversation that we want to have. But I also want to note that if you don't want to participate and you don't want to talk, that's fine too. I'm not going to pick on anyone or expect that you will participate if it's just not for you. Inclusivity, just on that, we want to do our bit to encourage all voices. It'd be really helpful if you could introduce yourself and where you're from before you speak, if you do choose to speak up, and use the chat box as well for any questions. We're also recording this session as well. So I just wanted to flag that too. Like I said, read confidentiality. We encourage you to share what you learn from the training with your colleagues and others, but we'd also like you to not share too many personal stories or experiences. sorry, we don't want you to share other people's experiences and personal stories. And like I said, just be mindful about your own self-disclosure and do what's best for you. We're going to record it, like I said, so you have the freedom to revisit the content, but we're just going to manage around that to make sure that confidentiality can also be maintained. I'm going to stick to time, and I've already gone 1 minute over. So that's it for group agreements. Are you all comfortable with that? If you have something to add, I urge you to use the chat box and let us know if there's anything else you would like that would create a sense of safety and comfortability for you in this session. Hopefully you're all okay with what I've just outlined there. So before I hand over to our guest speaker, who's waiting eagerly to speak to all of you, I want to just do a little bit more getting to know each other and find out who is in the room or the virtual room here today. I can see that a lot of people have told us in the chat box, but we're going to dive into Slido for the first time today and get to know you a little bit. So the link is there in the chat box. It's also up on the screen. You can use that QR code or use the number code there as well. If you can dive into Slido and tell us, as people already are, what organisation you're from and what's your burning question when it comes to engaging men as allies in the workplace. I'm dying to know what you're just... Is there something in the corner of your mind that you're like, I really just want someone to answer this question? Even if you feel like it's a silly one, I guarantee someone else has that question as well. We've got Champions of Change, John Holland, Stockland, Mervac, CSRO, ABC. Hello, ABC. I'm in your studios quite a bit. Often finding myself on ABC Breakfast and Drive. Those are my two gigs. Maribyrnong City Council, hello. I used to live in your council. A whole wide range of organisations popping up there. It's so nice to see you all. Welcome. Hello, Monash Uni. I now live around the corner from you. All right, here we go. I'm now dying to hear, what is your burning question for today? And it could be anything, absolutely anything. I'd love to hear, because we can then hopefully weave it in or know what we need to do next time as well, if we can't. Oh, lots of thinking I can see. Got people thinking through it. Resistance and backlash, absolutely. Shelley, I'm going to make sure I ask you that. Hello, Lisa Pusey from Champions of Change. It's lovely to hear from you. Any new research on human-centered approaches to engaging men? Great question. Shifting older colleagues. It's a great one. How do you do this work while maintaining inclusivity? That's a question I have as well. So I'm going to, hopefully we'll get some answers to that today. Lots around backlash, defensiveness, and some in the chat as well. How do we do it and decrease the current backlash? Passive to active allies is such a great shout out, because that's the key, isn't it? They're the people that we want to move. We know they're there and we know we probably can move them. So how do we do that? Understand women's experiences. Oh, woke gone mad. My goodness, let's do a separate conversation on that. Whoever put that in, I've got so much to say. We'll have to chat after this. Okay, some beautiful responses there. I'm getting a sense of where you'd like to go in this conversation. So we'll see how we can weave that in. And Shelley, who I'm about to introduce, you've seen this. You can also take it there if you want to. Keep putting your suggestions in there because it's really important information for us as well, and particularly even in designing future sessions. So please don't feel like that we've moved on the screen. You have to stop. If you've got other thoughts, please dump them in there or in the chat group as well. Like I said, we've got a jam-packed agenda, so I'll keep us moving. For those that like to see what the plan is, and I'm one of those people, here it is. It's up on the screen. We're going to start with a bit of a keynote from Shelley Hewson-Munro from Working Together with Men. About Working Together with Men and that model in particular. And then we'll have a roundtable discussion with those who have been leading projects to engage men in their workplace and hear more from them about what works and what doesn't work. So some of your questions will be fielded in that session. The final part of our session will give us a chance to contribute to a case study, and I'm going to get Mike up on the screen and the microphone, Mike on the mic, to run that session for you. We will be asking for volunteers for a panel to brainstorm and suggest solutions to the challenge that will be presented to us as a case study by Mirvac. So I am very much looking forward to that. I love a case study, get our brains firing. Okay, so that's the agenda for today. Let's dive in though. We've got Shelley Hewson-Munro, who's going to help us with looking at this Working Together with Men model. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce her. She's led initiatives across Australia for the last 18 years in programs and projects responding to and aiming to prevent gender-based violence. She is a masculinities practitioner, social worker, teacher, and research investigator in the Working with Men space, and is the lead author and designer of the Working Together with Men model and co-designer of the Working with Men and Boys for Social Justice assessment tool. Shelley, I have a question for you about, do you ever have time to put your feet up? But I'll ask you that later. She's currently the manager for Prevention, Masculinities and Learning at RMIT University within the operations portfolio of health, safety and wellbeing, prevention of gender-based violence and sexual assault and harm. What a title, it's incredible. Where she oversees innovation learning and health promotion for all students and staff. Shelley is passionate about community-led action for social and gender justice and the role that men have as active and accountable allies. Thank you so much for joining us, Shelley. I'm going to hand it over to you for a little bit, and then I might have some questions as well. Over to you.
Hi, Shelley Hewson-Munro. Been around the traps. Loved everything that was coming up on that screen. That was like, it's been my whole career in words on a screen. And all of those things that you typed up about those top kind of hot questions are things I deal with on the daily and things that I actively am trying to respond to, and all the work that I do. And just acknowledging that I'm on the Boonwurrung and Wadawurrung lands of the Kulin Nation, and a lot of the work that I do is absolutely informed and immersed with First Nation allyship and the work that they're doing out there, and that's a really great resource there from SEED, Indigenous Youth Climate Network, that has some really great things in there that can transcend across all that we're talking about today. And I guess I just wanted to share a personal story of my work has never been about a woman giving it to the men, right? It's never been about that. It's actually been about some really deep personal and transformational experiences I've had by having the honour and the privilege of living and working in a number of Aboriginal communities and elders and people that I really love and care about across the country. And I was gifted fundamental experience of understanding, not racist, but understanding what privilege actually means, even if you've never had a privileged upbringing yourself, and just the gift of being able to see and feel the other outside of ourselves. And also a lot of this work that I do with men is about what the evidence tells us, but a deep understanding of also how this work with men touches something quite fundamental inside them about their perceptions of other men. And this work that was done with Fabiano in 2003, so thousands of years ago now, is the work that was happening in American colleges with young men, and about bystanding and upstanding can look like. And their key finding was obviously that often it was men's perception of what other men might do, how they might intervene, that was actually how they got involved. So if you're in an organization or a business and other men don't know actually where other men stand on the line, are they getting involved? Have we engaged them? And so look, the model, the resource, the movement, working together with men has been an evolving model. I never planned to write the first one, and I've just written a second one with a co-author, and Dr. Sarah McCook, who just finished her PhD on engaging men and masculinities around violence prevention. And it's been independently evaluated. And the work that we're doing here at RMIT at the moment is the focusing on the building and testing of tools that can support evaluation and accountability. And at RMIT, the work that I'm leading, we are embedding a masculinities framework into our operations and into all aspects of student teaching and business. It's a huge goal, but we are doing it. And I'll share some of the other resources we have to see it within that kind of business model as well. And so the last 5 years, the Working Together with Men model has been applied across Victoria and New South Wales in several key settings. That's including 2 separate dual universities and training, vet institutes, several community orgs, women's health and local government. And so at the heart of it, it's not just a community groups model. Wherever this model has gone, whoever the men are that are being engaged, it's adaptive and it works. So it transcends across all those kind of levels. And it is and the resources are place-based and movement-making tools. You can essentially, it's a ready-made meal, pop it out of the fridge, put it in the microwave, have a crack at it and adapt it to your setting. And I guess that's one of the key things around language I'm talking about today. When I say a setting or a community, a business, an org, whatever you call yourself, your people, your place, that's who I'm talking about and to today, because this model does adapt wherever it is. And look, it began in 2016, absolute grassroots, west of Melbourne, calling out to the men there, do you want to be part of the solution to end violence against women? It's gone on to do a plethora of things from there. And currently, it's you're going to hear from Luke later, Sonny Charles from the original, the OG ally is here in the room today as well. And some of the things that we're doing at RMIT. Now, all of those things look very exciting and everyone's like, yeah, but exactly, because there is a challenge for working with men. And what we know is that work can stay frozen in awareness raising and low stakes engagement approaches, which we know doesn't actually tackle the difficult and uncomfortable work of moving into that full identity of an active and accountable ally. There are many amazing initiatives and projects attempting the work, but they're often the process and very lacking in evaluation. And when evaluation does happen, it's quantitative and on how many men and qualitative of men's own reflections on change. So yeah, I loved it. Every man should do this, that kind of stuff. And what we know about the related spaces of queer, Black Lives Matter, and First Nation allyship and evidence and a scholarship emphasize that those attempting to undertake the work as members of the dominant or privileged group are not always best placed to recognize their own transformation, complicity, strengths, or challenges. And again, this work that I've developed is based on that also personal experience of doing this work, where I had the privilege and absolute terrifying honor of being supervised while working in an Aboriginal owned and controlled health organisation monthly by a group of elders who would sit in circle, and I got to sit on the outside of the circle and they talked about me. And I got to hear and listen that. And that sounds very confronting, but it was done with such grace and kindness, but also accountability. And I learned profoundly from that. And so the work that I do is about how can we build that kind of stuff into what we do so that we can be kind, but also accountable. And because allyship is actually a very contentious concept, both in GE spaces, so gender equity, and in anti-racism movements, and for bloody good reason, because there is a risk of self-identifying here, and that's all you get to do. I'm a good bloke, I'm a good whitey, whatever it is. And that this doesn't actually require a deep interaction or authentic relationships with women or those most impacted by violence. And this model and the work associated with this means going beyond claiming the label of an ally and actually engaging, identifying men who are interested in being part of the solution. Because, for fear of rocking the boat, we water down a lot out there, and we need to be aware of going softly or not applying an evidence-based approach, that the touch is so light that it's actually confusing and it doesn't have any real impact. And so those one-off presentations by an ex-footballer or the morning teas or the pledge walls, etc., must be seen as that information sharing, comms approach, soft awareness raising that is actually part of a bigger piece that's going on. Because what we know about men who want to be part of the solution is that they're bothered by inequality and violence, and they are aware of the depth and the breadth of some men's perpetration within your business, within your organization, not just globally out there in the world and the stats from the news, but actually they know how men operate in your setting. They might not articulate it, but they are very aware of it. They're uncomfortable with traditional ideas of gender and masculinity and want to express themselves in more authentic ways and create and do authentic things in relationships. They are interested in strengthening their emotional intelligence and help-seeking skills. They are absolutely fascinated to meet and speak with other men who also think like this, but they will not always facilitate that conversation on their own. And they describe wanting to do something but not skilled or confident to attempt it. So when you actually get them and have a chance, they're like, I'd really like it, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. We also know that they don't always have the skills to lead this work, as it's often outside of their scope of experience and a qualification. Still, to this day, we do not have this kind of content, knowledge, and skill around psychosocial skills or gender equity in the workplace being taught in a higher education or a vet education setting across all courses. So we don't have those things being set and mandated across, especially across men-dominated trades and areas like IT and STEM. Men that are interested in this work want to participate in low stakes environments and concepts. They don't want to always be pushed out on the front on the look at how these 5 amazing men that are about to go out into the horizon and they might fail. They want low stake stuff to sort of build up their skill, capacity, confidence, and capability. They want to build connections and relationships with other men that are facilitated and guided with skilled people, and often from outside, someone to help navigate that learning, norming, and storming and their own vulnerability. And probably one of the biggest thing in which this model, continues to butt up against is that the more power a man has within his position, the more resistant they are actually to the boundaries of the model and accountability. The more you try to get them to do this, because that's what is the next stage, the less likely they will do. We have seen men with the most power not turning up to training sessions, not turning up to the mentoring sessions, sending through incompleted lean canvases and dot points. So, they're the things to think about. They're the things to be prepared and ready for. And that's what resistance looks like, right? It's so easy to talk about resistance as like when the person comes into the room, ready to be, up for the fight. That's resistance. We can all go, we know exactly what to do here. But the smoky and insidious resistance that looks like someone just learning or grappling or didn't have time, that's tricky. That's tricky stuff. And so part of this new resource, the Working Together with Men 2.0, is this concept of allyship, which is 100%, you know, coming from the work from anti-racism and First Nations scholarship and advocacy and practice. And this is, you know, really laying it out clearly that allyship is a doing word. It's a phase and a stays. It's cylindrical. You know, there's phases and identities. Sometimes I have been 100% a rock solid co-conspirator and there for people, and then for all sorts of reasons, mostly personal or fear, I have shifted back into an ally phase, you know, in certain movements where I have gone back, and because maybe I need to do some more thinking and learning, or maybe because the risk has become so high, I've had the privilege of choosing to step back into a less active phase. And so with this model, it really helps guide men and others through what to expect of people. What does action look like? What is just someone, you know, turning up and showing up, but then what is the difference between someone who's actually going to push the change that we need to see? And just a little side note, co-conspirator is not someone who's, you know, doing conspiracies. It's about conspiring together for the greater good. And, you know, at the heart of this model, and, you know, with some of those things that were coming up before about, you know, woke gone mads and, you know, all of that stuff, I'm absolutely for, you know, let's talk about wokeness, is that this model is about persuadables. It is about your movable middle. So this Framing Masculinities message guide that was done in 2020 showed that there are sort of 3 key attitudinal groups around, is masculinity a real thing? Is, you know, do men need to sort of come out of these outdated stereotypes? And so as per usual, there's the 26 haters and 25 lovers, you know, percent. There's always the for and against in any kind of makeup of a group. But wow, look at that 49% we haven't engaged, you know, and this is the biggest thing, is that there's 49% of the population that hold weak, as in like not sure or conflicting attitudes towards this kind of piece of work. But what it tells us is we haven't spent enough time engaging them or getting to know them in our space, in your org, your business, your community. Who are they? Because have you reached this market of men yet? Have you, have men in your space been fully activated to their full, you know, ally, accomplice, or co-conspirator status? Because these men are often uncomfortable with token or soft touch awareness raising efforts too. So they won't always turn up to the morning teas because they're like, well, what's that going to do? I know what, you know, Jono's doing down on that side. And so they step away from some of those things as well. And this quote from an ally, we were having a conversation about the good blokes and, you know, just being able to turn up, and because you don't do violence, then, you know, you're a good guy and you're part of the solution. But he was like, I'm only that in my head. You know, I don't actually put myself on the line. I don't prove to someone on a daily or a weekly basis that I'm actually of any positive good to the solution. But I'm off the hook because in my mind, I'm an ally, but I'm not actually activated. And so the key thing about the Working Together with Men model is that it is a principles-based model. So there are the key principles that are on the next slide that are embedded, and also getting men to hold themselves accountable and to guide themselves and others. It's designed to be place-based and reflective of who and what and where you are. It's a volunteer model, so it's a calling out to those who want to step forward. It engages men where they're at while also challenging their understanding of power, privilege, gender, and men's use of violence against others. It has key features that are recommended around how men are recruited and identified, screened, and trained. But it's flexible in how they can do their project, their idea, and how they can implement their change in their area of influence. you'll see that there's these 8 practice steps of the model. So you're calling out to try and find that movable middle, and some of your, green light, I'm a believers. You're identifying and screening them. They're being trained. We know the evidence says that any key training with men around this stuff has to be a minimum of 12 hours. That doesn't have to be done a 12-hour slam a day. No, it can be done in installments and slowed down. We use a lean canvas. So this idea, so the men are stepping forward to pitch an idea around what they think within their agency, their org, is something that they want to work on. That could be going and reviewing a policy. It could be something as radical as attempting to do, I don't know, a wrestling competition, whatever it might be. Because wrestlers, there's a lot of respect and trust in that. It's not just, they have to actually be mentored in this idea where it's applying also the Our Watch, what we know are the key action areas. I'm going to talk about, I'll show you a lean canvas in a minute. And then they present to an accountability panel. So the men have to Shark Tank it to a group of women and or identifying people that if it's a project that's specifically about gender-based violence or gender inequality, about people, wanting to support increased pronouns use within the organization, for example, it would have people on that panel that could identify and give that expertise. And then they debrief it, they embed that feedback, and then they deliver this prevention project. As Sonny and Luke, who are out there, will tell you, it is the engaging men that takes the longest. Once you've got them, the magic 3 to 7 usually is the number we see. Getting the actual ideas off is the easy part. It's actually getting the men and then getting them through that training and that first bit and to a panel that takes the longest. And these are the principles. So these principles have been in draft and created from community, with experts, from women's voices. And it's these 4 principles that, often I would hear men say, I don't really know what it is I should do, or I don't feel like there's something reputable that I could follow. So we'll here you go. Here are these principles. And even when we get men to say which ones are easy, they'll often talk about 1 and 2. Once they actually go on their ally journey, they start to talk about, actually, I'm a bit shit at all of them. And the more I actually understand what it means, I'm really grappling now with this one, which I thought was I was the boss of. And I mean, that's the thing we also see. The more you actually engage in this transformational work, the less you know, the less you want to identify as top dog, the more what you hear is, I don't know everything. I'm still learning. And so one of the key things about this model is that there is a theory of change behind it, which a lot of men's pieces of work does not have. It's got this elusive world peace as the goal, rather than something of actually what we know we can guide men through. Now, the radical and pretty groundbreaking piece of this work is that these ally identities actually match with our short, midterm, and long-term theory around and the evaluation. So this model with this latest resource also gives you a full evaluation plan of when to even ask questions, the questions you can ask, so you can even actually have your own internal evaluation based on this model. So this is what the kind of lean canvas looks like. When I first came up with it in 2018, it was based on all the, LA tech, gurus and, no more big, long project plans. Let's have something quick and, easy. But as you can see, it's quite in depth, and the resources in these in the 2 resources, it provides a lot of tips and tools and things to adapt it into your setting. And so I guess the key thing you'll hear a lot of the time, evidence-based, applying evidence-based. Well, this model has it all applied for you. You don't need to worry about women's thoughts and feelings because it's absolutely embedded in the model. You just need to find the thoughts and the feelings and the realities for the women where you're at, so you just start where you're at. But the key action areas have been embedded, because if we go back, you can see up in that top right corner, impact, apply the national prevention framework. There are no idea can actually be put on this lean canvas and taken to accountability panel without them saying which part of these key essential areas and supporting actions are being activated in their model, in their idea. What are they planning to do? Are they just want everyone walking around the office with, we don't hit girls, peace out? Well, how is that going to, lean into those essential actions and those supporting actions? Because this model also helps you signal and prepare for resistance. It's coming. You plan for it and you think you know which bit you're going to get, and out of nowhere, it's, well, how was not expecting that resistance? Some of you might know what Gillette did in 2019 when they completely pivoted to change their brand. They had to go hard and fast to signal the values and approaches were changing, because they had a very historically misogynistic and outdated brand, to put it fair and polite. So they had to go a bit hard and fast. But what we saw when they did this, there was, reels of social media with Gillette razors burning and I've got my money again, woke, gone mad, all of that kind of stuff. But geez, I don't think Gillette's doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure they're still making lots of razors and money. So in your darkest moments of can we pull this off? Will we lose it all? Think of Gillette, let them be your guiding light. They took some big hits, but they've survived by completely doing a pivot and saying, this is where the line is now, and we don't go back, we go forward. And the key thing about this kind of work is its signaling is so important. It sets the scene. It's a key part of awareness raising. It's telling everybody, this is where we're going now. We know this might not make everyone feel comfortable. We're not going hard and fast. We're going slow and steady, but we're going to the horizon regardless. And this kind of signaling work that this model does when it's in an org, community, or business is that it brings allies closer. It brings that movable middle closer. So it highlights them. It also highlights you're entrenched. It highlights where there's some real rotten problems, and that's okay. We can see that clearly, and we know how and what and where we might engage them, because sometimes it's really important to know where it's going to be hardest and where we start now, and we start soft and steady to build up. Because the complexity of this work and men's experience is that it's personal. If we're, if I'm going all using feminist theory, personal is political. This is touching on the core of many men's complete identities as a collective, as an individual. Men also have experiences of violence and abuse and child sex abuse. There is a whole lot of lived experience around intersectionality and where someone might experience power and where they may not. But we absolutely know that there are strong links between socially dominated forms and patterns of masculinity, so men's sexist attitudes and behaviors, and men's perpetration of violence against women and others, including other men. So something to also consider in this work is that sometimes men are scared of each other as well. And so if we are not providing a truly intersectional viewpoint of the lives of the men in our organization and their own experiences, we might also be grappling with resistance that we've kind of, essentially flared up. And I guess just in, closing, is that these are some voices from men. That bottom one there on the left side was one young ally talking about, their experience of considering power and privilege. They came from a single mum background in a very working class, underprivileged area. And, for them, understanding that in certain aspects they do have power and privilege was a really personal experience for them. But when he came on the other side of it, you know, it profoundly changed how he operated in his work life and in his personal life. The top one up there in yellow was about an ally who was just about to do a whole bunch of sporting allocation for a local LGA for a council, and the training came up and the mentoring came up, and it fundamentally made him completely halt all the piece of work and change where he actually gave access to sporting clubs, including having one particular club who had for 100 years access to the best ground at the prime time, even though it was predominantly just, you know, not no fathers, no single dudes, you know, who could train at 10 o'clock at night and it wouldn't matter. And he shifted it to being around a culturally linguistically diverse group of women's a sporting club, and also looked into childcare and playgroup components, accessing other things in the community so that women could actually access that space at that time that was best for them. And I guess, you know, in that closing thing is, and this is where I even saw in some of the comments being written, is that if you want an organisation that better responds to issues of inequality, harm and violence, it actually does mean working more with men. And it means men actually doing some of that more grappling of relationships. You know, as that quote there says, is that I actually, as a man, push away relationships with other men. I impose the burden of emotional labor onto the women that I work with, or the women in my life. And so, you know, this model is really about where can we start gathering and having different conversations with the men in our organisation to, yes, hear where it's at for them, but also shift and push it forward. I hope I stayed to time, Rana, did I?
Oh, look, what is time?
Man-made. No.
Time is a construct, Shelley. No, that was wonderful. Thank you. I was taking notes and so many thoughts going through. I am going to give people listening a chance to ask you some questions, because I suspect they do have many. But while they're doing that, so if you have a question, now's the time to put your hand up or dump it in the chat function as well. And if you can come on camera, it would be so wonderful, because I know Shelley would love to see you. But while people are doing that, I just wanted to ask, because there will be people here who have listened to you now, are convinced this is a great model, but I guess I'll just, and you sort of touched on it, but expand on, how do you pitch something like this in a workplace? There might be people here who are thinking, okay, I do want to do this, but how do I get people up top to buy into this? But also, how do I get the blokes in my workplace to sign up to it?
Yeah, well, the thing is I'm always about be transparent. That's why I've got a title that says Prevention, Masculinities and Learning. You can see me coming, right? So they can run, they can hide, they can step forward. And I think what happens, and I was only talking to Luke the other day about it, is that we can get so overwhelmed by the evidence and we get so overwhelmed by the problem that we actually don't even do the doing. Just say, we're looking for men who want to be part of a project that's about creating a more equal and less violent workplace. Come and join. Do not be afraid of what the next part is, right? They will be there. We know statistically they are there. And they will, you might not get heaps. The thing with men's work is everyone thinks the 5,000, you know, marching up the street, coming towards us. We don't need that. We need just, you know, 3, 5, 7, you know, people that are willing to, you know, pick up the spade and start digging, because then they go on and gather. The work goes on and gather. I've been 2.5 years at RMIT. I can tell you not everyone wants me to be there. And there's, you know, but we're still there and we're doing stuff. And we're seeing, as we are doing, and as people can start to go, that's what right, that's what they're about. Oh, I can see where I can help out. We're having now more men in powerful positions or in agitating, you know, management level where they can push up and get traction higher up, coming forward and going, I saw this, I think this was what I can do. Can we work together? And that's outside of the actual model, because this model does the firework. It signals and it builds enough confidence, and you also get a really good assessment of where your agency's at without doing a really onerous corporate assessment process.
But just on that, actually, I'm going to hold my question because Walter Lee has a question, and you've all heard my voice way too much today. Walter says, Shelley, it might just be a comment. Shelley, I like your point that sometimes men are scared of each other and women as well. And you also said that engaging men is the stage that takes the longest. May I suggest that when you say we want to create a more equal and less violent workplace, we don't frame it about just being more equal and less violent for solely women, but that it will create a more equal and less violent environment for all genders. And there's a similar comment earlier around, and you touched on it in what you were saying, that men experience violence as well. And so, do we need to frame this differently? Or is there a purpose behind violence against women being kind of a specific conversation?
So yeah, you'll see in all of my work, I talk about gender-based violence because 100% that incorporates women and identifying women's experiences. But a lot of the work, when we just say it's about women, that is just opening up the door for a whole lot of people who want to just come in and say, but what about my experience? What about my experience? And the reality is, that's what I meant about the resistance that we can create, is that men absolutely have experiences of violence, mostly from other men. They won't articulate that. They might bring up intimate partner violence happens to men too. Yes, it does. But the stats actually don't break down what is the identifying sex or gender of the partner. So in those stats that we see, that can also be within same sex. So, man perpetrating violence against another man in the relationship that they have. So I think and the way that I frame it at RMIT, which I'm in operations, I'm in the big dirty business part of a dual uni, right? Like it's rotten, but amazing. Is that we talk about gender-based violence. We talk about where do we all, because that's even what the Framing Masculinities Guide shows us. We all have a socialized experience of gender that we've got some things to unravel, but we can still broaden it. But I always in my work is about accountability to, unfortunately, men still are perpetrating the most violence against others. And when we look in our workplaces, where do we see the most problematic behavior and who is it happening to? So broadening it out, but being accountable to who is experiencing it more and who is doing it more is a way that actually cuts that stuff. I don't have people yelling out in meetings at me or in talks when we have it across a gender-based violence and let's create a better, safer, more equal org for us all.
Thank you for that. I think it's a question on a lot of people's mind. It does come up time and time again. Lisa Pusey, I will hand it over to you because you've got a question.
Thank you so much, and so lovely to see you, Rana, and thank you, Shelley. That was just wonderful to have you present that. I'd seen some of your materials, but there's nothing like having you share it and really just bring it to life. So thank you. I learned so much, also taking copious notes. I was just interested in I suppose one of the aspects of the framework that you outlined, like I love the emphasis on action, right? That is just, so key to being, to allyship. I was really keen to unpack a little bit with you. I understand from the framework that men come forward and they come up with an idea and sort of pitch that to the accountability panel. And I was just interested in that and your thoughts on that approach, but also like listening to what women in the organisation are saying is important to them, and asking men to step up and contribute to that work. So I know you would have thought through all of this in spades, and I'm sure that's what the accountability panel is also for, to kind of balance what they might think is a great idea and actually what women in the organisation are saying that they need. But I just was hoping you could unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, no, great question, and a question I get asked all the time. And the reality is in the training, men are trained in the key principle area, and their idea when they're doing their lean canvas goes through, I guess, the people in the organization that are facilitating the support of it. And they are prepared for the accountability panel, and the panel is also prepared. So the panel have their own lean canvas. They, you'll see in the latest resource, it talks about that they are to get the lean canvas, 48 hours before the panel, so they can actually have time to think about it. Because one of the biggest findings when I did this panel the first time in 2018 was that we had the biggest learning out of a men's project about women. And that was women were afraid to also give their opinion even when they had power. There was a lot of, but what if he doesn't want to be an ally anymore? What if I say something that makes him, step away? So all of this, and this is why this model is a gender transformative model. This is why it's a gender-based violence prevention model, is that it's getting us all to grapple with all this stuff that's been, fills us all the time. And so in the panel itself, there is not just pressure on the woman in that moment to hold up every single woman in the organizations, please hear us, it's a moment in time. But then there's also written feedback that the panelists can give, so they can talk either more broadly or more personalized to the ally. If they feel like in the panel, they were being respectful and not wanting to say, look, your ideas, there's some real challenges, and they might say there's some real challenges, but then in the written piece, they can give some really key dot points. What is also crucial is that women often make links to men, like, have you talked with this department? Do you know there's Sally that's actually employed to do this work? Or have you talked to Ben at blah, 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 because he's leading something really similar. So they're making links. And then obviously the men are supposed to go back and, change their lean canvas or, update their idea, but that doesn't automatically mean a green light. So I have not approved every project idea when I've been supervising work or, the people involved in it, because sometimes there's too many ideas and an agency is like, let's just do 1 and 2. Or there's things that actually don't meet the criteria. And so on that dot point about the more power men have, what we find is the more power men have, the less they actually fully complete and engage in the process. So it's just that's why in the 2.0 resource, there's actually a sheet of like a tick off paper of, have you done this? Not yet. Have you done this? Will this idea be green lit in our agency, yes or no? And so they have all of that before they go to the panel. So they know it's not a Shark Tank and get your million and walk out of here. So those that often have to do the most listening end up, having a very felt and real experience of their idea. For sometimes the first time an idea of theirs hasn't been greenlit in a company. And that is the profound experience for them about, you can't fake this stuff.
Thanks, Shelley. Thank you for that
Shelley,
excellent question.
Oh, Sonny, go.
Just 1 minute. Yeah, I just want to say something around what Shelley was saying. Like, when we introduced the accountability aspect in our men's group, like you can see in our meeting, when there is a presence of women, this accountability panel group, you can see even the way we talk. You can see that we might be guided, and what we might be saying now, we know that it is monitored, and that can also guide the allyship to be at the right path.
Yeah, so that journey of your personal journey, Sonny, of like being able to be like, this is what it's about. It's not always a win. Yeah.
Sonny,
especially when you were talking about, especially when you were talking about a fake. So like, even if, let's say you want to fake it within the group, within a men's group that you are, but because of, that someone is there now observing you, and you can fake among men, but you can fake when they are the women who've been in the accountability panel.
Mm.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I was just going to say you were one step ahead of me because I wanted to actually bring you in and a few others to actually open up this conversation and get some thoughts, particularly from men in the room who have experience with this model, but also working with men as allies. And thank you, Shelley, so much. That was really insightful and lots of great comments in the chat group. There are some questions there too for you as well. And Sonny, you've kicked it off for us, which is great. And I think that means I'm doing a really good job because I don't have to do anything. You're all just following along. But we're going to, like I said, open this up a little bit and just look at initiatives to engage men as allies for gender equality in the workplace and really hone in on what's working and what isn't working. So a lot of you kind of pointed out the kind of practical stuff that you want to look at and how do you actually get this going. So Sonny, you're one of the people that I wanted to speak to. In particular, you're a project officer and original participant in the Working Together with Men Brimbank project. And we also note that you're coming to us. You're sometimes here, but right now you're in South Africa, which is a huge effort. So thank you. I also, wanted to note that Luke Baker's in the room from Women's Health Grampians, who's also currently undertaking a version of the Working Together with Men model out through the Wimmera. We've got Lisa Pusey from Champions of Change, who's already been on the mic. If you want to jump in, I want to also note that Wayne Phillips, Commissioner for ACT Fire and Emergency Services, is also here. And I would love to hear from you too, Wayne, to share your experience as a male ally and trying to build engagement on gender equality among other men. So maybe I will start with you, Commissioner Wayne. I don't know if that's how people normally address you, but I'm going.
Commissioner Wayne. Perfect.
It's very Batman over there for people in the room, but anyway, I'm going with it. I guess from your point of view in the work that you've done, I would love to hear how you've come to this work, but also what you've seen that works and doesn't work.
Thanks, Rana. Hey, Lisa, how you going? So I would just want to acknowledge Champions of Change because without an organisation like that, male-dominated industries struggle to find the narrative to embed particularly gender equality into their workplace. So it's been really important for us and for AFAC and for emergency services across Australia, which are really very, very male-dominated. I've been lucky enough to work with a couple of former commissioners in Fire and Rescue New South Wales who were at the forefront of doing something really big around gender equality. Greg Mullins in 2016 announced gender parity for our recruitment strategies, followed by the next commissioner, who's Paul Baxter. Very strong advocates for gender equality. So in a ways, I'll say I rode on the tails of those really good leaders in doing that. And so daring, strong advocates of gender equality is really helpful in regards to forming a strong narrative through your whole organisation. So that came from simple things that Champions of Change did with the your leadership shadow is a really important tool for us to do. Things you do, things you say, and things you prioritise every day. Difficult conversations every day. Conversations away from the limelight, conversations in your cohort. It needs to be always forever happening in the workplace to bring gender equality. So it's really easy for me here to be here to talk about gender equality because everyone here is on board, right? But it's harder for a male-dominated workforce to be in a group of men to be doing that a lot. So it's being able to do that all the time in any group setting to keep advocating for the reasons we need gender equality or gender fairness in the workplace, calling it out. In fact, I was on a meeting this morning with Cassie Lindsay, who works with Lisa. She's coming to Canberra and doing some work here in my agency about, talking about, gender in our workplace. And, it's good to sometimes bring men and have those uncomfortable conversations and make them squirm and realise that we're in a position of one, we're in a position, because we are men, we've been through emergency services, but two, we're also in a position where we can actually change things and make it more fair and equal. And also, it's not just fair and equal for the two genders per se, but it's also for the LGBTQI community, core communities. That just brings that whole inclusion aspect to it. I think I spoke too long then, maybe.
No, not at all. That was beautiful, and I'm always so fascinated in those really kind of male-dominated environments, or even if there's the perception that it's male-dominated, it may not be, how these conversations go. Luke, I'll bring you in. I'm interested to hear from you, because you're going through the Working Together with Men model at the moment. If you're seeing some of the things that kind of don't land or shouldn't happen or don't really work, what should we kind of steer away from?
Yeah, look, just to give people a bit of an insight into the area where I'm working. So I'm from one of those old 5th generation farms in the Wimmera. So I grew up in that part of Western Victoria. So working in the Wimmera and the Southern Mallee, and that's a really conservative part of Victoria. So since Federation, we've been in the National Party, and there's been a state and federal members. So quite a socially conservative part of Victoria. So I guess recruitment is that's into the model is one of the most difficult things. So as part of my role, I've been going out to different organisations and talking to sometimes mixed gender, but to men in those organisations to recruit them in. So I guess my what I found works best is really that focus on our science that we have in our primary prevention work, that we can lean on the drivers of violence and the 8 essential actions. Someone's come up with those for us. So I've been accused of being, that was wonderful at the start when we started the people putting up that resistance that they encounter, and it is its own conversation. But I was accused by one fella of selling out my species, which I think he meant gender or sex, but I got the point. So I've worn all that as I've gone around to these places and engaged with men. But I think speaking to empathy and compassion is part of that thing that brings men across, that who are willing to sign up and be part of the model. So I have a presentation that I take around, but we're really, we're talking to men who I guess are who are interested, and we want to action them. We want to action them in their community. So we were able to recruit 6 or 7 men in that area. We've gone through those training phases, and yesterday they got up to their action, which for them was to make a video. Didn't go all that well, but we're confident that we'll leave these men in their community of origin with the knowledge and the skills to continue to be part of the solution and to continue those actions over and over again in their own space. So those conservative men, if we want to use that word, that's bringing them across, has really talked about this as a health initiative, and it's based in science, not in politics.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And that ability to kind of come back with facts when we do feel that resistance or pushback. I'm going to come back to you in a second, Sonny, because I have a specific question for you. But just on resistance, Commissioner Wayne, I'd love to actually just hear from you how you navigate that, both as a leader, but also just on a personal level, when it's clearly something you're driving and you do face that backlash.
Thanks. Hey, Luke, I really liked your comment about the language about being an inclusive, compassionate leader. That just resonated with me. That's part of my narrative now, to make it a bigger subject around people coming to work so they belong at work, feel like they belong at work. There's simple statements, but I think that really resonates with people. Instead of fitting in, you come in to belong to a team, to a workplace. So that's part of my narrative here since taking on the new role as Commissioner, is having a very inclusive workplace. But can I say that sometimes reporting and really firm decisions need to be made in regards to ensuring gender equality, for instance, performance development, your PADPs or your contracts. You need to, at the start of the journey, I think you really need to have reporting on what you're doing in regards to being inclusive. And it can come across as box ticking, but sometimes with a process change, it changes behaviours and it makes a commitment. So it turns words into actual actions that you've got to report against. And you can have a man who's a very senior leader within an organisation. At the end of the day, they've got to renew a contract. They want a promotion, and you've got to report. And I think it's really important. I know it may be the stick approach, but sometimes some people need a stick approach in regards to changing behaviours, changing processes, and giving people opportunities. And I think it's a big struggle at the start of any journey for an organisation is dominated by men, and that's why it's good to have organisations and reach out to get advice and think about the processes you can put in, because sometimes it's not just all about conversations. Sometimes it's about the percentage of people who are at meetings, the percentage of people who are directors and senior directors, etc., etc. They're really important things we've got to report on, and we need to.
So really making sure that we're honing in on that accountability piece, because that is going to sit underneath everything we do. Thank you for that. Lisa and Sonny, it kind of dovetails into the question that I have for both of you, which is, that question around, and Commissioner Wayne talked about box ticking. We often see change-making work can sometimes land in that performative space, the morning teas and the badges, but does it really go further than that? So what does actually take us beyond that, especially from that place of allyship? What actually gets us beyond the kind of performative side of it? I'm happy for both of you to jump in when you want to.
I'm happy to jump in first, if that's all right with you, Sonny. And thanks so much for the question. I can see just so many familiar faces and names on the call today. It's so wonderful to see so many members of the coalition here. But for those that don't know who we are, I just thought I'd just give just a quick snapshot of the Champions of Change Coalition, just to give a bit of context to what I'm going to share. So we have over 260 CEOs or equivalent leaders of private, public and community organisations who are members of the coalition, who all step up in their personal leadership capacity because they want to use their positions and their power and their influence to progress gender equality in their workplaces and beyond. They're using all, throughout all their spheres of influence. And Wayne is one of our incredible leaders. Thank you so much, Wayne, for your contribution today and all the work you do. When we started out as a strategy, we actually were called and named ourselves the Male Champions of Change Strategy in recognition that, progress on gender equality had largely been the result of women's activism. But if we wanted to really accelerate progress, we needed men to also step up beside women and be accountable for progressing that change. And we changed our name a few years ago to recognise how many more women we had in our membership, but our mission very much remains the same. And I think one of the things that obviously we use the power of working with CEOs and leaders as a very powerful lever for change. But as Shelley has mentioned, and I think we all recognise, there are many people in our organisations at other levels of the organisation that really shape the day-to-day experience of people in the workplace. So, we know that direct managers really can, make or break a day, essentially, for a lot of people in terms of their actions and how inclusive they are and the kind of cultures that they foster in their teams. So one of the things I wanted to share is a series of essentially workshops that we started piloting a couple of years ago, which, for want of a better name, we've called Everyday Champions of Change workshops, but really have been aimed at activating a wider network of men and women in some organisations and cases. It's really, the pilots have varied depending on the context in which we're running them, but really activating a wider network of allies and champions for gender equality work. And I think, some of the comments that you made, Shelley, around sort of, personal reflection, but also getting feedback from others really resonated, because that is where we start with the people that participate in these workshops. We ask them to complete the leadership shadow exercise, which has that component of personal reflection, but also really importantly, getting feedback from people around them about, where they could really strengthen their leadership on gender equality, and really frank feedback about where they're perhaps, not living up to expectations around their leadership on gender equality, so that we ask them to complete that in advance and to come prepared to the workshop to share insights from that exercise. And then we set up the conversation in the workshop itself with reflections from members of our Champions of Change and including senior women, on the importance of men stepping up on gender equality, and the importance of just really practical, quite simple, everyday actions that they can take to make their workplaces more inclusive and advance gender equality. And that can be everything from, calling out the unfunny joker in the moment, making sure that there's shared voice and space at meetings, leaving loudly for your caring responsibilities and caring commitments, whatever it might be, just very simple practical actions. And they leave the workshops with a very, to your point, Rana, a practical list of actions, not just the sort of the theory of I should do more, but really, a series of things that they can do every day to make a difference. And we still very much, I still call it a pilot, even though we've run it a few times, because I feel like every time we do it, I'm learning so much from the process, and definitely learned a lot from the conversation today about how we can probably strengthen it, But one of the mechanisms that we've put in place is, that accountability piece, is they don't just leave the workshop and then that's it, but we have different mechanisms for building some support for their work. So having a network of support in the organisation, but also the accountability piece. And we do that through meetings with the CEO, then the Champion of Change member, their CEO, post-meeting around what they took away from it, what they're going to be doing differently, and have regular touch points, as well as regular touch points with the coalition going forward. So I just wanted to share that as an example, I suppose, of the kind of the way we've tried to activate a broader cohort of people, willing men in our organisations to step up on this work and really have it very action focused and oriented. But I'd love to hear, Sonny, from you as well on that. Thank you.
That's a really good example of a structured approach to actually making sure this work is embedded across organisations and really driven by the leader. Sonny, in your experience, how do we move from that performative allyship into the kind of the real work in inverted commas?
Yeah, I'll just pick up from Lisa. Like what Lisa was saying, like that willingness of men. So like I think the work starts to actually try to identify those leaders, those CEO who are in a different workplace that are willing and that are ready to serve as a role model. Because as the leader in any workplace, your behavior, your action, your engagement with your staff can tell how whatever project or ideas you want to come with that we influence their own activities. So I think there we need to actually as Shelley was saying, it's not a number, but how quality those numbers, how readiness those people are, and how can I say, how they are ready to serve as a role model. So like if we can get, like each workplace, we can get those role model. Like let's say taking it back into our community, like our project was around cultural diversity, people coming from different culture. Like I represent, I was from Africa. There was people from India. There was people from different diversity. So like after recruiting all those people, let's say you can go easily to talk to African about family violence, about equality and those things. You can easily go to, let's say, religious leader. You want to talk to a religious leader. You must be like a religious leader to be able to influence a lot of other religious leaders. So like we need to create that space that is safe and able to actually work on so that we can able to multiply. So like being able to get quality people who are ready, who are willing to change that little community that you are, or that little groups that you are, it goes a long way. In our group, when we started, like if let's say you want to go visit your community, but you don't have the manpower or you don't have the skill and experience, we can come together and move along with you. So that when we move along, we go with the experience, we go with the skill, and we go with also the cultural background. So like that can show that this is not about Africa, this is not about Asia, and this is not about Aussie, this is not about Aboriginal. This is about men helping to actually to promote equality. So like I think is a network. We need to build up the network. We need to support the network with the resources, and actually try to give them the training and around it so that we can work hand in hand to actually promote equality in our workplace.
Thank you for that. I'm getting a bit of a theme as well, particularly from what you just said with what Shelley talked about, and even the Champions of Change model, that kind of focus on quality and getting, relationship to relationship, getting people in. We often think about change making, the world works at scale, but actually if we just, find the people that are ready and willing to actually go on the journey with you and slowly bring others along with us, we create that network. It's really well said, Sonny. Thank you. Before we dive into the case study and I hand it over to Mike, I just want to bring in Alisha Taylor-Jones, who's on the call as well, for just a very brief kind of insight into a live program that's running at the moment. Alisha is from the National Association for Women in Operations, and they're piloting a men's mentorship program, the Gender Equality Men, GEM, over 6 to 7 months in partnership with Our Watch. And that program is drawing on the Working Together with Men model. So Alisha, I just wanted to bring you in really quickly to just give us a bit of a sense of how that pilot is going and what you're learning and noticing.
Thanks so much, Rana. And for the confusion of my background, I wear 2 hats. Today I am here as Our Watch's Workplace Implementation Lead. Some of you from each will know me, but I do also work with the National Association for Women in Operations, and Our Watch has set up a pilot project started a couple of months ago, taking their broader mentoring project. So they have run for the last 12 years a project around mentoring women. It has, as of this year, it has over 250 mentees, 150 mentors, supporting women in operations, being those in manufacturing, retail, mining, construction, a lot of male-dominated industries, in how women can thrive in the workplace. Now, NALWO's mission is around gender balance at all levels, and the missing bit for the last few years has been, how do we bring men on that journey? If we're talking about gender balance at all levels, how do we get men into the conversation? So the pilot of the NALWO GEM, or Gender Equality Men program, currently has 21 men from across 8 different organisations that are participating in the mentoring program with a twist. So Our Watch presents at the beginning of each session for 45 minutes, giving them a bit more of a knowledge share and understanding of the space around workplace equality and respect and that framework. And then the men go off in their separate groups. There's 4 mentors across the 21 men, so they have 5 to 6 sort of men per group. And they go through deep diving into their own experiences, their own reflections, what are the circumstances in their business, and they're, across the length of the project, required to take action. And again, I guess to speak to Shelley's wonderful framework, have that accountability to women and others in their organisation about what they're actually going to be doing in this space going forward. So I can't really speak to its success as yet. It's a pilot. It's been going for a couple of months. It'll go for quite a few more. But it'll be interesting to watch this space and how we can actually use peak bodies like the National Association for Women in Operations and other professional bodies to drive this type of work in member organisations. Thanks,
Thank
Rana.
you so much, Alisha. If you're keen on this work, you're interested, you've got a number of different options here, even in this very panel, to reach out to between GEM, the Working Together with Men model, and of course Champions of Change as well, and Our Watch. So make sure you're hitting them up after this, especially to those of you who are just speaking. There's lots of comments and chat in the chat box. I encourage you to go have a look, and some interesting conversations happening there as well. All right, Mike, you've been so patient. We're in the home stretch now, but we're going to now hand it all over to all of you, and I'll let Mike take over.
Thank you so much, Rana. You're doing a great job. And I've got my timekeeper hat on right now that is going to keep this next session valuable, but also to time, because we've only got a certain amount of time left. So the way this next little bit will work is not quite an accountability panel or Shark's Tank like Shelley has set up in the Working Together with Men model, but not entirely different either. It's a consultation style group. So first of all, I'm going to invite Stuart Pearson from Mirvac to outline a key problem, and you'll have 5 minutes to do that, Stuart. Then a panel of participants, which we'll get volunteers in a sec, and might tap a few people on the shoulder. We'll ask some questions, and I'll give you that group 3 to 4 minutes to ask those clarifying questions of Stuart before Stuart goes off camera and just listens as the panel discuss the case study, pooling ideas, brainstorming solutions. And then finally, we'll invite Stuart back for a 3-minute just share what kind of key insights he got out of that process. So all of that should bring us in under 20 minutes. For the accountability panel, but it's not accountability panel because there's men and women and all people on. I'd love to just invite firstly Shelley to be on that. Wayne, it would be amazing if you'd like to be on that. Sonny, it would be fantastic to have you on the panel. Maybe Lisa from Champions of Change, it'd be great to have you on that. And there's a few other spots there. So if you're keen to be on that panel, stick your raise hand function up right now, and Jess behind the scenes will spotlight you on the screen. So Jess, just again, it'll be Shelley, Sonny, Wayne, and Lisa. You don't have to be an expert. Your perspective and thoughts and thinking will be interesting. Colleen has raised her hand, so Colleen, please, you'll be spotlighted as well. Anyone else want to join that little panel discussion? Rana, it'd be great to have you in there discussing, and Sarah, you're in. Well, without further ado, it'd be great just to hand over to you, Stuart. I'll let you share your own slides, and 5 minutes is on the clock.
Okay. Can everyone see the screen? Yes. Yes, you can.
Yes.
Thank you. Just before I start, and I've only got 5 minutes, Mike, but I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I am on, being the Gadigal people. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country and their connections to land, sea and community. And I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This is a bit of a cryptic cover slide, and it's 30 by 30. It will make sense momentarily. We are a fairly, I would like to think, progressive organisation in that we respect diversity at all levels, but we are not perfect by any means. Some context for Mirvac is that we are a property developer. We've been in existence for 50 years. Currently, as I speak, we have a workforce of approximately 1,800 workforce in terms of employees, with over 400 different job titles. That gives you a sense of how eclectic we are as a company. Included within that are an in-house construction function. So we have in-house design, in-house sales and marketing, and in-house construction. And currently the workforce of construction is 370 employees. We have a labyrinth of subcontractors that work on various sites around the country, but in employment relationships, there are 370 employees in construction. 17% currently of construction employees are female, and the industry norm is 12%. So we feel like we're doing okay, but there is more work to be done. And so what has been, I guess, a conversation that's been occurring at Mirvac for a little while now is, can we challenge ourselves to have a workforce in construction of 30% female by 2030? That is a challenge, no question. So if you break that down mathematically, we've got approximately 65 females, and we really, if you include things like turnover, almost need to double that by 2030. And 2030 may seem like a long way away, but it really is a challenging goal, particularly given the history of construction. I know there's been some comments in the chat around construction specifically. So that is a challenge. It's a significant challenge, but success would look amazing. It would look amazing for women. We believe that that would provide, if nothing else, a safer workplace, because it will normalise women being in construction. And it also will provide us with, a great opportunity to continue the good work to really forge a path for females in construction. And so, what do we do? What do we need to consider? Well, look, Mirvac, I think, and I stress, we're not perfect, but we do have a proud record, particularly in relation to gender diversity, 7 years in a row with a 0 gender pay gap. We've been number 2 in the world for gender equality, 2022-2023. We currently have uncapped paid and domestic family violence leave. And we have 20 weeks shared care parental leave for any gender, male or female, has the access to 20 weeks leave, paid leave. Importantly, we do have what I would describe as a very agile and willing culture. But this is a major challenge for us. And are we ready for it? Are we up for it? We want to challenge ourselves in this space, and that's why we're really interested in the feedback that we will get shortly. I also want to acknowledge the work that's been done, particularly by Mike and Alisha, in our partnership with Our Watch. The Our Watch partnership has involved a survey of our staff, has involved numerous focus groups, and the recommendation report that we received earlier this year has borne out some pretty interesting statistics. For example, 9% of females believe that identifying as a female is a barrier to their success, whereas only 3% of males see being a female as a barrier. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. 55% of females feel confident raising gender inequality issues. So 1 in 2, more than 2, feel confident, which means that just under 1 in 2 don't feel confident. And as been alluded to earlier, some of the focus group feedback suggests that gender targets can undermine merit, and in fact is inconsistent with merit. So there remains pockets of our organisation that may be viewed as opponents or resistors that we need to be mindful of and incorporate into our thinking. So this is a challenge, and we need your help, and we're happy to really open it up to the conversation now. Certainly we're mindful, and we've engaged in programs like Allyships, and I know Shelley talked a lot about Allyships as part of her model, retaining through buddy and mentor programs, looking at flexibility strategies. But ultimately, as really is the focus of this session, how do we engage men in construction? We need your help. So really keen to hear from the panel or from anyone else. And I know there's a few other construction representatives online who I'm sure will be equally keen to hear the feedback of what has already been a very rich conversation. So thank you in advance. If I don't thank you later, I've already taken a lot of notes. I need to get a new pencil as a consequence. Yes, I do use a pencil. Sorry, I'm a bit old school. but really keen to hear the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stuart. The members of the kind of consulting group are on screen now as well. Anyone else, feel free to add your comments in the chat and we'll try and incorporate that. But really now the next 3 to 4 minutes is any clarifying questions from the consulting group. 3 to 4 minutes for that, and then we'll let you discuss it.
Stuart, got a quick question, not in construction, obviously. When it comes to leading the way in regards to your culture, do you have any, have you got any aspirational targets on what the makeup of your contractors that contract you look like? i.e., do you put something in your contracts to say that we would like to see 30% of your contractors be your tradespeople, be female as well, leading at the front? Because I imagine getting a contract with Mirvac would be quite lucrative to me, and I would probably want to, attain that target to get your money.
Currently, Wayne, no, we don't have targets for subcontractors. As I said, there's quite a labyrinth of contractors, and some of the contractors may have relationships with us for 10 years and others relationships with us for 1 day. There may be quite a specific contract task that's required, and so it's very challenging for us, in fact, to have those targets. But I really like how you're thinking, and it's certainly something that we would aspire to, perhaps in a phase 2 approach.
I'll jump in. Stuart, it's Colleen from Champions and also Inclusivity Quotient. I'm assuming that the point you made about gender targets undermine merit, that there are some in the organization who feel that way. I'm assuming that is both men and women.
Look, those focus groups were confidential, so I really don't know, but I think that's a reasonable assumption. And I don't think that that's an unusual position for a percentage of any workforce. I've certainly heard, I've not seen firsthand, the phrases like, diversity equals less jobs for men. And there are those pockets of resistance that we need to be mindful of and incorporate, and hopefully turn into early adopters as we intend to engage men.
Right. Just a quick follow-on question then is there, or was there a deep dive on the barriers that impede women from advancing in the organization with the leadership at the leadership level? So let's say
no, the short answer is, Colleen, is no, not at this point. We do want to engage construction leadership very strongly on this challenge. We really do need their buy-in, and it won't surprise you that the majority are male. And so, to really move the needle, if we're going to get close to this aspiration, we really need to engage that leadership group.
Great, thank you.
Just a quick question about the targets. It speaks to engaging women and attracting women to the industry. Did your surveys shed any light on retention and the issues of keeping women in the industry?
Yes, it did, Sarah. Look, that's an absolutely critical part, because I think sometimes we think there's for want of a better phrase, a quick fix around recruitment and attraction, but retention is equally critical, if not more so. We can, by certain initiatives, bring lots of females into the business, but can we retain them? Can we provide them with meaningful careers? Is a really critical part of our challenge. And so we're equally focused, if not more focused, I think, on retention.
Such a great question. That was one of mine. My other question was around the attraction and recruitment piece. I just wonder, the women that you have currently in your construction business, have you asked them about, why they were attracted to a career in construction, and, potentially as well, just sort of trying to unpack what careers or jobs they might have had beforehand, like thinking about sort of, other talent pools that you can tap into. Just curious about, what you might have learned about that.
To the second part of the question, Lisa, not so much. We haven't really conducted any deep dive into what were they doing before, but certainly we're keen to understand what drives them to pursue a career in construction, and it's really critical that we listen to them, and I know that's been a strong theme from today's session. And to that end, we've carried out what we call lean-in sessions, for females within Mirvac, which are predominantly female, to have conversations of that exact nature. What is it that motivates them right now? What would they like to see us progress? What would they like to see us stop? We really want to, it's really critical that we listen to everyone in the business with an open mind, listen without judgment as to what they really would like from us. As I said, I do believe that we are a willing and agile culture. So we're really keen to listen to what they have to say. And I think that's really important. I think leadership is absolutely critical, there's no question, but we've got to listen to all parts of the business, whether it's our leaders, whether it's our junior cadets who are coming in really with their very first job as a female in construction. We are all ears.
Excellent, Stuart. This is a great segue for you to now be all ears while the group discusses your case study for the next 5 minutes. Over to the group to have a discussion.
Yeah, I just want to build up on Alisha, and especially like when you talk about retention and recruitment. Are you looking at, let's say, like if you get conversation with the female or women that you already have in the organization, how best are you guys like training them like to take leadership role in the future? And there are some other aspects, like I talk with one recruitment agent, like they develop a model, like let's say I need worker to fill in this position. So like they are like they train workers that can fill in that specific position. So like let's say you need the amount of women to actually fill in those positions. Have you guys like consult like any recruitment or consultant to actually develop a package or training package that you can use? They can train women to fill in a specific position that you want to make available for them, and how best or how are you working with other recruitment agencies that are there, like actually to maybe actually, like you say, motivate women to take those roles?
I'd like to add my perspective, both as someone who's working in the attraction of women to the construction industry space, but also someone who for 20 years worked in project delivery and worked as a female in construction, and also engages with a lot of women who give feedback about the industry and the culture and why it's prohibitive. I feel like there is a very big difference from women in management roles versus trade roles. They have very different experiences on site compared to what they do in a corporate environment. It seems much easier for those culture shifts to shift and filter down in office environments, much harder in on-site environments. It seems to be much more difficult to influence a cultural shift in those spaces. There's also a question of the nature of the work and commercial versus domestic construction. Commercial spaces seem to feel safer for female tradespeople and female employees because of the scale and the numbers. I get a lot of feedback from female tradespeople and even female management staff who work in isolated spaces and feel unsafe. So that's a big barrier for some women. And then there is still a culture of misogyny. There is still a culture of women can't do this as well as we can, and why do they want to, and why do they want to take what's ours, which is some feedback we get from some men. With regards to attracting people to the industry, I think that recruitment and trying to fill specific skills needs is only part of the question. There needs to be a broader discussion, which the Foundation is working with a lot of local learning networks and schools with in that space, in trying to break just gender stereotypes about roles. And that applies to males in traditionally female-dominated roles as well, breaking this whole work is gendered at all, and working with local learning networks and schools doing vocational days, try trade days, really encouraging students to view jobs as skills centric and what skills they possess and what interests they possess and attributes they possess and how they can be applied to various industries regardless of gender. And that needs to start as a re-education of our youth and our school students and schools in how they approach vocational support and education and career support that they provide their students. It's much more grassroots than just recruitment and attracting women who have probably already made the decision that they want to be in the construction space, and by that point are making a choice as to which organisation feels safest for them and more aligned for them in terms of values. It actually is a much earlier phase of education that needs to start.
Coming in, I'm disrupting and just building on the backs of everybody. First off, I just, which Sarah has started to talk about, is everyone went straight to the women. We're here to talk about the men, right? Like every time we go, we're off to the women. What we need to, actually, we already know that that's not some of what we need to do. There is so much recruitment going around that. I think everybody knows, however you identify, get in on a trade, get on site, right? So I think let's remember we're going where it's easiest. So if we start to have a conversation that we're supposed to be talking about men and we're going straight to how we get more women, we need to stop there. So this is that line in the sand, Stuart, someone needs to be the listener for when we get off track. Right. And so that's one thing I want to hold in my disruptor role. Second of all, I really, I want everybody to hear this, because there's a lot of business out here that fundamentally feeds into TAFE, that fundamentally feeds into education. You are not pushing on TAFE education and curriculum at the highest level enough to say we must have psychosocial skills training for anyone in anything that is associated with this industry. They do not. I created a pilot on psychosocial skills for the workplace for men-dominated trades. It was squashed, iced, right? All it did was talk about the kind of skills we know the future and now needs, which is safe and appropriate and healthy people at worksite. That means being able to identify when you're mentally not doing so well. When we look at construction, we have men turning up to work to kill themselves. They turn up to site, right? If that was happening at childcare centres, if that was happening in hospitals where professionals turned up to their workplace to get their mates to take them down or to respond to their body, what is that telling us about the men that are already in our industry? We also know that we are hemorrhaging men out of the industry because it's toxic to everybody. If you want to have a more equal workplace as a man, get out of on-site, right? You'll get better leave, better hours to work and be with your family if you're not on site. I'm a tradie's daughter. I'm a tradie's wife. I work within trades. I'm not just some, crazed academic up in a castle writing things and looking at people through the leaves. This stuff is real. And I think, where are we not thinking about what is already unsafe for men? Hazing, bullying, all these things that are making it unsafe for women on site actually are unsafe for men on site. Having chatted to some really big building companies in domestic, they do their yearly rounds of health and safety in the workplace, never touch on mental health, never touch on family violence, never touch on gender equity. That's some of the people that are getting your deals, right? So, going back to one of the questions that Wayne posed of what kind of hoops are you getting them to, say that they're going to cough up some money for or put some energy in for, or where can we work together? But I really want to stress, please put pressure at the highest level on these new TAFE reforms that are going through right now about how we should be training and educating anyone going into the industry. Because we're not just talking about young punks anymore in apprenticeship, right? There's lots of people that are 45 going into, I want to be a chippy. I've always wanted to be a chippy. Like, so let's think about it. A masculinities lens is about thinking about the men and how that's impacting both positively and negatively. Well, that was too much on the mic. Someone shut me down. Sorry, goodbye.
I actually want to expand on that in terms of what your policies are, Stuart, in terms of your family policies in the workplace. Are they gendered? Are they focused on how much women get leave and how much women get support for caregiving roles, for example, but don't equally provide that same level of support and opportunity for men to be caregivers or main caregivers? That's something that's really expressed to me from a lot of my male colleagues who would like to be more involved with their children's lives and caregiving and give their partners equal opportunity to have career pursuits. But at the moment, it's geared more towards providing the female partner support in terms of taking time off or leave to caregive, but not the men just as much. We need to ungender caregiving. We need to make that flexible and suitable for everyone. And then the culture of first in, last out, you have to sell your soul to the building industry and work 24 hours a day is still rife. I deliberately stepped away from project delivery roles because I couldn't be on site from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day and have 3 children and raise a family. And my husband's backed off from those roles as well because it just becomes unsustainable for your mental health and burnout. And is there a flexible way we can approach the roles that we have in the industry and the way we approach the workday and job sharing and the way we even deliver projects? Is there a smarter way to do this so that we're not burning people out in the industry?
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I'm going to pause what is clearly a very important conversation from any further comment. I'm so sorry to shut it down, but we really do need to wrap up the session overall. What this is saying to me, though, is that we could definitely make time for some consultation type conversations with more case studies like this. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch with Our Watch. But I'm going to hand back to Rana. Oh, sorry, I'm going to hand to Stuart for a 60-second last thoughts from Mirvac.
Thanks, Mike. Look, I think I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Shelley. This is about men. If we focus on women, we're not going to get there. We need to, but that's only part of the solution. So, getting men to be strong leaders, to cut out inappropriate behaviour is critical. I can tell you that our head of construction just took 20 weeks parental leave to share time with his newborn. That was, really setting the standard about what is, really progressive behaviour, I believe. In terms of flexibility, that's another really key element for us because we know that females do tend to want more time to either drop off their children or pick up their children. So flexibility is key. This custom and practice that you must be present on site from 7 till 6 is something we've got to really, really challenge. So there are some real opportunities for us. There's some real needle movers for us, and I'm really pleased with the passion in this conversation. And to the point you made, Shelley, I think I'm going to take advantage of some of the allyships of everyone on this call and be reaching out to people at different times. Hopefully you're receptive to continuing the conversation. And I will pause there, Mike. And over to you, Rana.
Thanks so much. Over to you, Rana.
Thanks, Mike. It's my unhappy job to wrap all this up. I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time. If you do, I just want to remind you of those support services if you do need them after this conversation. I also just want to ask you to very quickly do a bit of an evaluation for us. We've loved having you here. The chat group is going off, I have to say, which I love. So if you could just scan that QR code and do the very, very quick evaluation for us, that would be much appreciated. And let us know if you would like this kind of session again, and particularly that case study. I know I would love to see another one like this again. And while you're doing that evaluation, hopefully you've all scanned it, but we'll put a link in. I just want to also mention some resources as well that you might like to follow up looking at if you like to read and deep dive into things, as I know I do. Plenty of forums and resources available for you all. And then these are the upcoming practice forums as well. So jot these down, especially. Very similar content, but also diving into some niche areas, really important. And if you've enjoy is probably not the right word, but if you've gotten a lot out of today, you're definitely going to want to turn up to these as well. Thank you so much. Please, like I said, fill out that evaluation. Thank you for your time. You did such a wonderful job as listeners and contributors to this conversation. So thank you. Go have a hot drink or a lie down or get some fresh air now as well. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.